for the ultimate source of inspiration, knowledge, and entertainment, look no further. Network Kingdom is a unique platform that brings together experts from various industries. Through networking and collaboration, we create inspiring conversations that educate, entertain, and motivate our listeners. Whether you're a business professional, an entrepreneur, or simply someone looking to grow their knowledge base.
Hello, I have Krystal here with me today, and I'm quite excited to meet her. Hi, Krystal, how are you?
Hi, I am excited to be here this morning, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation.
Awesome. So let's start. Who is Krystal?
Goodness. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I am a mom. I am a Feng Shui master and an interior designer.
What designer?
An interior designer. I help design homes.
Designer. Oh, wow. No wonder I can see all those little masterpieces behind you. Sometime at some point growing up, interior decoration was one of the things I wanted to do.
Yeah, it was something that I always loved doing when I was a kid, although I didn't actually realize it was a job that I could do like for other people until I was in like my 30s. And it sort of, the TV, it started coming out on TV all over the place. And I was intrigued with just watching it, and I mean, I was going through some stuff at the time, as we do. I was in a down end of my roller coaster for about 6 months and was just watching it as a show before it finally was like, I could do this for a job, and needed a job anyway. So I was calling around looking to see if I could do that when I found out, oh yeah, no, it's a career. You go to school and get a degree and all of that for it. So yeah, it was
nice.
My childhood wasn't, I wasn't encouraged a lot to think about career choices. My parents really just thought my only objective in life should be to grow up and get a man and have some babies. So,
You're kidding me?
No, not at all. That was like their big vision, like just get married and have babies. Like, even when it was, I don't know how they do it there, but here, when you get to be in high school, like your senior year in high school, maybe even your junior year in high school, depending, you start going to college visits, you start looking at different colleges, you start deciding what you're going to major in. My parents were just like, yeah, you're too stupid for any of that. Like, you're not cut out for an education or for a career. Just,
Was that because you're a woman, or was it just what they thought of you?
I think it's a little bit of all of that. Partly, a big part of it is, yes, because I'm a woman. And, both my mother and my grandmother were teen moms. So it was, I was born before Roe became legal here. I mean, it was born the same year that Roe versus Wade was passed and abortion became illegal in the United States. So before that, we didn't have as much choices. Like, it was just get you a husband. My mom wasn't really educated either. Her goal in life was to get a husband and get somebody to take care of her. Like, that was just sort of what they thought. But they were also extremely religious. And so part of that was their church teachings was, like, that's your role, is to go from father to husband. Like, as a woman, that's your only role religiously too. So that was a big thing for them.
So let's rewind a bit, right? How did you feel? Did you at least have a choice? Did you at least have the option of choosing the husband?
Well, I mean, yeah, I chose somebody my parents
I
hated.
mean, at that age, how much did you know to choose? But hey, it was your choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't really ever want to get married. That was kind of thrust upon me as a kid. I got pregnant as a teenager, and of course, my family was they really insisted that marriage was the answer to that. And I mean, I chose him as a boyfriend because my parents hated him. So like that was the big qualifying factor. That was the only major qualifying factor that you needed to have at that time. Was I needed to somewhat like you, and my parents needed to absolutely hate you. Like my parents are extremely abusive. Let's start there. So I don't like my parents. I don't actually have anything to do with my parents, and I haven't. I made a conscious decision when I was 9, when my mom married her second husband, who is a violently abusive, alcoholic pedophile. Like I was very clear. I made my stand then. Like I want nothing to do with you, and I will never be like you. So my childhood was very fraught with violence and abuse and oppression. So my only wish in life at that time was to get out and to make them as miserable as possible on the way.
Okay.
So let's be clear about all of that.
I want to believe that even from some of it has you've mellowed down on some of those.
I've healed a lot of that stuff. I still have nothing to do with my parents, because they are still the same.
And your dad?
Yeah. Well, my father's passed away. My dad passed away about 5 years ago. My stepmom, who was a hero in my life from a very young age, because both my parents remarried when I was 9. My stepmom, who was probably one of the few people that I admired and looked up to and really wanted to be like, she was my hero. She passed away when I was 16, right before I turned 16, actually. So, yeah, they're both gone. But my mother and my stepfather, who are not good people, I just don't have anything to do with them at all.
Okay, so how did that growing up, how did it affect you really?
Well, I didn't think a lot of myself. Like it's hard to put it into words, really. Like I felt extremely capable. Like I could, not so much that I could do anything, but that anything that I wanted to do, it was going to be up to me to do it. And that I've got a lot of fight in me. So if I want it, I can fight for it. I mean, those are the sort of things that my childhood created. I always had my own vision of my life, of what I wanted for a life. And it didn't really matter to me what their vision was. Like I had a different vision. So I think it actually made me more determined. For a long time, it made me more determined just in this idea of, I will prove to you that I can have the life I want. Like your vision for me is like, I don't need a man to survive, or I don't need to do it your way to have the life I want. And I can be happy. So it made me very determined to prove myself to people. But it took me a long time to work through all of those trauma responses because they were so deeply embedded. I mean, I think I spent probably 10 years of, I don't want to say therapy because that's not right, learning how to heal, learning tools and learning, because like going to a therapist wasn't a safe place for me. My parents took me to a therapist and told him I wouldn't stop lying about being abused. So every time I talked to him about being abused, he would gaslight me about lying. So I had a lot of trauma around that as well.
The therapist will tell you you're lying.
Mm-hmm. What about him?
No, did you say the therapist would gaslight you and say you're lying?
Yeah, when I was 9, when they first got married, you know, I told my father what was happening and about the abuse, and there was a big custody battle. And of course, because of all these accusations, they assigned all these extra people to the custody battle. And one of those things was a therapist. And I don't know whose choice the therapy was. I was 9. I don't know. But I do know that every time I told him I was being abused, the therapist would gaslight me about lying. And then compare me to, you know, this wild horse being broken to saddle. It was all very disgusting, and traumatizing. So for me as an adult, when I was wanting to work through, when I wanted to work through all of that trauma and all of that stuff, when I was like, I need to fix me, like I am broken, therapy didn't feel safe for me. Like going and sitting down with a therapist is not a safe place for me. So for me, it was more like, what can I do? And I was sort of accidentally introduced to personal development, or the idea of personal development, you know, in like a group setting. I had one of the first, it was actually the second company that I started. It was a network marketing company that I got involved with. And the owner of that company was very insistent on training everyone because everyone was his downline. And so he would do these regular trainings all the time. And they were very like personal development-ish. And he had these special ones that were full on like personal development, but they were all about sales. And it lit something in me. Like I felt safe there. And so I had, you know, fast forward years, I had moved to Hawaii. And a neighbor kind of introduced me to these different personal development, like workshops and retreats. And I was sort of accidentally invited to one that my neighbor was involved with. And I asked him if I could go. And I just started getting very deeply involved in going to all these different like workshops and retreats and learning all of these different tools. And what I kind of noticed was, it was like, you know, the weekend hyped you up and you got to do all these exercises and work through some stuff, but it was like an event. And then that was it. It was, you know, like you release one little pocket of something, but you're still carrying around all the baggage. But I was learning all these things, you know, and all this stuff. And then I probably 8 years worth, you know, of time, something like that, that I spent doing all of this. And then I got hurt. I had a workman's comp injury where I tore a tendon at my job. And of course, because it was workman's comp, here, insurance does not want to pay anything. And workman's comp is the worst of all of them. They will deny. They sent me to like 5 different independent medical exams that they paid for, and insisted that I go to, in order to even qualify. And all of those doctors, one of them straight up said there was nothing wrong with me except for I was old and fat and lazy. Wow. And I literally had a torn tendon in my groin that every step I took caused damage. So for 3 years, I had to fight with them back and forth until I finally got, you know, like we settled the case and I got them out of the picture. So then I could get my own insurance and get surgery, which is what was needed. And actually surgery was needed within about 3 days is normal, because it's actually a pretty common injury in professional athletes because they do these quick moves and turns, and so it's a very common injury in athletes, and they usually have surgery within 3 days. For me, I lived with it for almost 3 years.
Wow.
And no one would listen to me. No one would believe me. They lied about it. First off, when I injured myself, like I felt it. I knew I had done something, like it popped, but it didn't hurt a lot. And as you can imagine, I have a very high tolerance for pain, right? I grew up getting beaten by a grown man, like punched with fists, stabbed. I have been beaten by a grown man. So I have a very high pain tolerance. So when this little pop happened, I didn't think a lot of it. I knew it, like I said, I knew I had done something, but I was like, it doesn't hurt. I'll be all right. And I kept working. I told my boss, but I didn't leave and go to the doctor. In fact, I didn't go to the doctor for almost a month.
Wow.
I kept walking on it. I kept going to work every day. I kept showing up. Because that was a work ethic that was just beat into me also as a child. I never got a day off. There was no Saturday morning, you were up at 6 to go weed the garden and clean the basement and do these chop wood and, work. So it wasn't like I had ever learned to take care of myself. So by the time I went to the doctor, they couldn't diagnose it. My primary doctor, that wasn't her specialty. And then when, of course, they tried to send me to specialists, the insurance people would be like, yeah, you don't need to do that. You just need to go to physical therapy because that'll fix it. But they hadn't even diagnosed it yet. So, of course, physical therapy caused more damage. Everything they did caused more damage. And so my body just, it crumpled. It felt like everything turned to stone. I limped and I very much babied my leg because it was so tender. But then, other things started to go wrong in my body. The whole thing started to deteriorate. And it brought up all of that stuff from my childhood. All of this, you're not worth it. You don't matter that much. That's how I felt with the insurance people. You're not worth us paying for you to go to this doctor. Just go away. They did everything they could to try to get me to quit my job. Because if I quit my job, then they don't have to pay anymore. That's what they do here. They bully and they try to beat you into submission, into going away so that they can just ignore you. And yeah, it changed my life. That whole thing changed my life because that's when I really started actually working through my trauma. To be honest, nobody was trying to help me. So I could only try to help myself. And I started doing yoga, just to get my body moving. Again, I'd tried to have a yoga practice for 10 years before this happened. And I'm a Feng Shui person and an interior design person. So I start with, I'm going to Feng Shui the place. Let me make my space right for healing. Let me do everything I can to get that energy, everything about my space directed at healing my body. And then let me put the effort in every day and just do yoga. And I did yoga for hours. We're talking 6 to 8 hours a day. I would just be stretching my body because I was crumpled up to this, I was hunched. My body was bent. I couldn't walk. And again, I don't know why I keep saying this because I haven't traveled a lot outside of the United States, but in the United States, I can tell you it's not a measurement. We talk about it a lot, but it's pretty standard. The length of a grocery store aisle.
Wow.
It's pretty standard. I have moved from one edge of this country to the other. My boyfriend and I spent 5 years living as nomads, literally moving every few months. And I have been to grocery stores from one side of this country to the other, and they're always the same length, the length of a grocery store aisle. It's just a kind of standard measurement that I don't know what it's called or how long it actually is, or if it's like that in all other parts of the world. But here, every grocery store, and I couldn't walk one aisle without literally crippling myself. I would be in bed for days. I can't walk that far. I can now, but I couldn't then. And I had to do something because nobody was trying to help me. And everybody that tried to help me, they ran them off.
Wow.
Except for my attorney. Like my doctor, they changed my insurance several times to get rid of her. But yeah, it was a nightmare.
It sounds like it was, and I'm just wondering, I'm listening to you and I'm wondering, so who did you have as a support system since you didn't have family? Were you still married at the time? Are you still married?
Oh, no. I've been divorced. We were married for 3 years. So I've been divorced since the 1900s. I was divorced in 1993, actually. No, I didn't have a support system. I was very lucky in that I had started dating someone, actually. And so he was there with me through a lot of this as my body deteriorated and as I've healed. And I mean, my children don't live close to me. They both live kind of far, but so I didn't really have much of a support system either, especially then. My boyfriend and I had just met, had just started dating, about 6 months or so after I hurt myself. So before I really couldn't walk, but yeah, so he stuck it out. I've been very lucky that he, because it was a lot for me to go through. Becoming disabled is hard. Like, not just the actual injury and the body changes, but the mental stuff,
Stuff.
the being
It does much more than anyone can see.
Yeah, when it first started, I felt like I just knew that if I didn't do something, I was going to wind up in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, that I might not walk again if I didn't take control of the situation because nobody else was helping me. And like I said, everybody that tried, they drove away. So I forgot what I was saying. Oh,
Let me interrupt you there. So, I mean, you had your childhood experience, which, by the way, you've made lemonade out of the lemons you were served. And then you get married, you have your children, you divorce, and work is going well, and then suddenly this accident and it stops you. And it just reminds me of something a mentor of mine said in last week or early this week, and it's kind of stuck. And I've been trying to use it to assess where I'm at and analyze myself and also know how to deal with situations. And she said, I can't quote her verbatim, but she said, in every situation. So I always say that you should always remember that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Now, she took it a step further and said that if we look at every situation in our life and make a conscious effort to bring out the positive aspect of it, would grow and would be thankful that it happened, instead of sitting there and wallowing in self-pity or getting all angry and worked up and not making any progress. And while you were telling me the different things you've been through, I kept wrapping it in my head and saying to myself, what on earth can be positive about having such a challenging childhood? But then look at how it helped you build tenacity. You're stronger, you're independent. That is not to say that what you went through was fantastic, but for you to move forward. And then, I mean, the accidents, like you had said earlier, which I'm going to go back to, during the accident when you couldn't move, I know people who have lost it from that kind of experience, who have totally lost it. Some people were never able, some people didn't even as much as have the fighting spirit to even give it a fight. But you sat there while fighting the doctors and the system, you were watching TV and you picked on a new career that you never knew that you had. So if that didn't happen, you probably would have still been saying, oh, I love decorating. You never would have thought to do it as a full-time job. So I'm proud
Well,
of you.
Those two things were several decades apart. When I started a new career and when this injury happened, I had been working as an interior designer for 20 plus years already when I had when I injured myself, actually. But it did transform things, because that was when I couldn't work anymore. So I sort of was like, well, now it's a perfect opportunity for me to start a business, because I don't have a job that interferes with my time anymore. And I started doing that even first.
So you were doing the interior decoration, but you hadn't really done it as a business.
Right. And so I kind of had an interior design business, but I really wanted to do something different, like, I really wanted to be able to help people with, and I wanted to use the Feng Shui. I saw it as how it could be different. And I was taking on clients with that to be able to help them with it. And as I was going through this process of healing my body, it kind of even transformed how I worked with those clients.
Wow.
Because it started with I actually stopped doing interior design unless we were doing the Feng Shui with it. I would no longer do one or the other, which is how I was doing it before then. It just sort of, because I'd already had interior design clients, and as I was trying to take on Feng Shui clients more professionally, the women that I was working with were all over the world. So I was sort of like combining all the pieces to the puzzle. And when I hurt myself and couldn't go to work anymore, that was sort of when everything all came together. And I started only doing the Feng Shui. But then as I was healing and started really understanding that the Qi, all this stuff that was happening in my body and causing all this blockage in my body, it was also causing this blockages in my space, this clutter to manifest that I'd never had problems with before. And I kept getting like stuck in my business. Like people would ask me questions and all of a sudden I would be like, I just don't know. I had no answers. Like everything was just so in there. And so as I continued to do yoga and to stretch and to work in healing my body, and getting all the Qi moving again and being able to get, I started to understand at an incredibly deep level, the depths of Feng Shui and how it impacts not just our space, but our physical bodies, and how we can approach it from both directions, right? You can approach the space first, you can approach the bodies first, you can approach from the mindset first, like, it's because they're all interconnected so closely and so deeply tied. And so it really started changing the way I was working with clients. And I would be taking on clients who, like, for example, wanted to maybe start finding love in their life again, who had been divorced and wanted new relationships. That was actually who I started taking on as clients. And some of them would be really stuck and not able to move forward, and others would be willing to or able to do the work with just a little bit of coaching. So it completely changed like everything about how I approached it, and their results were amazing as a result of that transformation.
So before we wrap up, I'm just curious, are you able to work with clients outside the country, like online?
Yes, all of my clients are online. That was another thing that changed so much, because I had been trying to do this before I was injured. All of the women that I'd been helping Feng Shui were all over the world. So everything was online. The only clients I took in person were interior design clients. So they had to be all right in my backyard, right? They had to be close. When I was hurt and I couldn't walk anymore, all of my business went online. And so I was able to help everyone globally via just like you and I are talking today. I'm able to work with clients this way to help them transform their space. And because of the way we do the work together, it's a very personal transformation as well that really changes them as women, as who they are in their power. It really helps them to step into that space. The way I work has transformed. And so, yeah, I love being able to. I worked with women from Europe to Australia. I'm looking forward to working with clients in Africa. I haven't had anyone in Africa yet, but yes, Asia,
Sure
I've had clients in Asia. So yes, I'm all over the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krystal. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. And you guys would want to hit Krystal up. She's going to be tagged on this anyway, so you would see her social media handles. Is there any other way they can reach you if they want to?
Certainly. There's quite a few, actually. I do take clients all over the place. So if anybody would want to have a conversation about their own space, they can certainly schedule what was that?
Find you. I know we're going to link up. We're going to link this up on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Will they find you in same places, or is there somewhere else?
Yes, they can. They can absolutely find me on social media. Like I said, if they want, they could schedule a complimentary design consultation at peaceandprosperityalignment.com. Or they can check out my YouTube channel.
Peace and Prosperity Alignment.
Yes.com. And so they can schedule a design consultation where we'll just sit down together, and just like you and I are doing right now, we'll have a conversation. But also my YouTube channel is really where I spend the most time as far as like on social media, and in email. I like email. I spend a lot of time writing emails about designing a life that you love. Nice. So I have a newsletter. That I put out every week. That's just about designing a life that you love.
For the newsletter on your website as well.
Yeah, they can download that. In fact, if anybody, we didn't really talk a lot about clutter here, but often that's a problem that my clients, that's where I start with them.
I'm sure coming back to talk about clutter, because that actually is something I also want to talk about. The clutter in your space and the clutter in your head. That's something we often, so certainly Krystal is coming back.
Awesome. I would love to. And between now and then, they can also download my free method of decluttering, which is at declutteryourmindset.com. That'll also put them on my email list, and they'll be getting emails about designing a life that you love.
I would go there as well.
Good. I look forward to it.
You want to design a life that you love. You want to hook up with Krystal. And Krystal, thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank you so much for having me. I have enjoyed it as well. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. Okay, guys, I'm out.
You've been listening to Network Kingdom with Omu Obulor. Remember, if you cannot see where you're going, ask someone who has been there before.